So, what happens when a US president gets accused of starting an unlawful war? Well, today we're going to break down the really intense backlash to a hypothetical US military action in Venezuela, all based on a viral video. Let's dive in and unpack the arguments.
All right, so here's how the source material breaks this whole thing down. It unfolds in 5 key parts. We start with the event itself, this invasion. Then we look at the immediate international chaos that follows. After that, we'll dig into the conflicting stories used to justify it all, a really powerful takedown from a veteran congressman, and finally, what he says can be done to pull back from the brink. So what's the flashpoint that ignites this entire firestorm? Well, the way the source video tells it, the whole scenario begins with some really sudden and decisive military action. Okay, so the whole thing kicks off with this incredibly dramatic scenario of full-on U.S. military invasion of Venezuela. And from that moment, the source dives straight into the immediate and, pretty intense backlash that followed. And right away, the response from inside Venezuela is just total defiance. The source really highlights this quote from their acting leadership. And you can see they're framing this not just as an invasion, but as an attempt at colonization. That really sets the stage for some fierce resistance. But that internal defiance, that was just the start. The consequences started spreading like ripples in a pond, creating this cascade of international problems. The source lays out some really severe and immediate fallout. First up, you've got the human cost. It reports casualties among Cuban soldiers and over a dozen Venezuelan military deaths, with more than 90 injured. Then there's the diplomatic nightmare. Get this, Chinese officials were apparently in Venezuela for talks at the exact time of the invasion. And third, it's about the dangerous precedent this sets. The source raises the concern that this creates a permission structure, basically giving a green light for other authoritarian regimes to launch their own invasions. And this perfectly captures the political chaos the source is describing. Just when you'd expect a united front, President Trump is quoted publicly, undermining the main opposition figure he was supposedly there to support. It just adds this whole other layer of confusion to an already chaotic situation. All right, so you're probably wondering, how in the world did they justify something like this? Well, according to the source, the official story was a total mess, just full of contradictions. So check this out. The source points to 2 completely different stories being pushed at the exact same time. On one side, you have President Trump reportedly being brutally honest, calling it a war for oil. But then on the other side, Senator Rubio is presented with a much more sanitized version, that this wasn't even a military operation at all. It was just a legal operation to catch a fugitive. 2 totally different narratives. And the host of the source video, they jump on this immediately. They draw a pretty sharp line here. They compare calling the invasion a legal operation directly to Vladimir Putin's framing of the war in Ukraine as a special military operation. It's that rhetorical tactic used to downplay the true scale of a war. So all of this messy, contradictory messaging, it really tees up the main critique in the video, which comes from a pretty powerful voice, a Democratic congressman who has actually seen combat firsthand. Now, before we even get to his arguments, the video makes a point of introducing Congressman Pat Ryan, and it's for a good reason. This isn't just any politician. He's a U.S. Army veteran who served 2 combat tours in Iraq. So that context really frames his perspective as one that's grounded in real, first-hand experience with war. And his first reaction is just visceral. He comes out and says this isn't just bad policy, it's a really dark day for our country. He argues this move doesn't make Americans safer at all. In fact, he says it does the exact opposite, making America weaker, not stronger. And for him, you can just hear the alarm bells ringing. He sees this as history repeating itself, right? He calls it the start of another forever war. And, that term just carries so much weight for anyone who remembers the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. And this is where he really drives the point home. He says the language, the justifications they're using, it all sounds dangerously familiar. It echoes the lead up to the Iraq War right down to, he says, the mention of weapons of mass destruction. Okay, so after all that criticism, you might be thinking, is there anything that can actually be done? Well, Congressman Ryan doesn't just critique, he lays out a plan for how to push back. And his plan has 2 main parts. First, you've got the official legislative route, using the War Powers Act, which is a law designed specifically to check a president's power to go to war to force votes in Congress. And the second part is all about grassroots power, getting citizens to flood the phones and pressure the representatives, especially those who might be on the fence. And really, this is a note he ends on in the source video. It's this powerful call to action, aimed at turning all that public outrage and anxiety into focused, organized political pressure. The message is clear. Don't just get upset, get organized. And that really leaves us with the central question that the source material puts on the table, right? When the people in charge can't agree on something as huge as going to war, what is the citizen's role? It's a huge question about where the ultimate power in a democracy really lies, especially when a nation is on the brink.